with the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, everyone received the June 4th minutes by email. Is there any discussion? If not, I can have a motion to approve. Any discussion?
I'll make a motion.
Do I have a second? All in favor? Any opposed? All right, we'll move on to correspondence, DOH enforcement list. Melvin Harrington suspended, his New York State certification suspended 6 months, effective 9/17/18, suspension stayed. Placed on 3-year probation, effective 9/17/18, civil penalty $1,000, violations 800.15B. Stanford Smith, New York State certification has been suspended for 1 year, 6 months deemed to have served concurrently with time period of December 2017 to May 18, during which the respondent did not have certification. Remaining 6 months stay. Forever prohibited from participating in continuing medical education recertification program. Assessed a civil penalty of $4,000. $2,000 of the penalty is suspended. Violation 800.16A7. Bayside Community Ambulance Corporation, New York State certification has been revoked, effective 5/29/18, violations 30121F. And Alondra Serrano, New York State certification has been revoked, effective 5/21/18, violation 800.16A4. Okay, correspondence?
We received an application for Dr. Cartier. He is a military aeromedical flight battalion surgeon off of Fort Drum. He is New York State certified and will be coming in. He should be here. He said he was running a little late. So I will introduce him when he comes in and give him an opportunity to talk a little bit about himself. Other correspondence, I would like to congratulate Roberta Simpson on behalf of the New York State Department of Health Bureau of EMS. She take this opportunity to congratulate you on receiving the New York State EMS Council's EMS Communications Specialist of the Year Award. Congratulations, Roberta. Secondly, on behalf of New York State Department of Health Bureau of EMS, I take the opportunity to congratulate Jeffrey Gibson on receiving the New York State EMS Council's Advanced Life Support of the Provider Year Award. Jeffrey is a provider with Mr. Deaver's service, so congratulations to Jeffrey. Other correspondence, at the last meeting, we had endorsed the DeGrasse Fire South Russell Volunteer Fire Department in St. Lawrence County for VLSFR. Their paperwork was submitted and they received their agency code 0759. Correspondence complete. Oh, and we also, congratulations to Canton Potsdam Hospital for their level 3 trauma designation from ACS. That's exciting.
Okay, old business, state EMS meetings.
I was thinking Debbie was. Can we come back to that?
Okay, all right. All right, we'll move on to BLS CME requirements.
Okay, so I did send out the BLS CME requirements. So I think first is the skill sheet to look at. Let me just find it here. Initially, I had added them onto the ALS one, but when we chose not to do didactic time for them just to do, skills. I don't know why. Where'd the notes go? I got the touchscreen. So basically, it will be, the skills stations will be an annual requirement due by December 31st. In here, it talks, why is it not coming up on the screen? Let me get out of all these other things. Did it come up? There we go, sorry about that. All right. So, again, that's just kind of the cover sheet. As a provider, the agency CME manager, the date, the end date, the semester. They would be we have skills requirement. Again, these are REMSCO approved skills, so Remac approved skills. So they would be due annually prior to December 31st. And they would submit to their agency CME manager as ALS providers currently do now. If they fail to do them, there'll be an automatic suspension of BLS providers' ability to provide the treatments approved as regional BLS adjuncts. Again, it's the agency CME managers who's responsible for notifying them. Again, upon completion of those skill requirements, they will be reinstated, the same as the ALS providers.
And do you want to add something there about after 2 suspensions, there's a fee to come back online like we have for the ALS, so that we're covering the costs of sending out certified letters and all that stuff?
So this will also be part of the credentialing manual, which that is in.
Okay.
But I can put a brief note on here. This is just some summaries of it. So basically, it's just an adult cardiac arrest AED scenario. A very simple scenario, or they can verify if they've taken a CPR class. So as a CME manager, you could take their CPR card and attach it to that versus having them do the skill if they renewed their CPR in that year. So it gives you 2 choices, but they should be familiar on how to defibrillate a patient. And defibrillation is, for BLS providers, is a Remac approval. Epinephrine for all EMTs, so one of the things that was found is that they're not maintaining their skills after the initial syringe epinephrine training. So I think we're right on key with doing these annual skill requirements. So again, it's a very simple checkoff sheet for them to do. Albuterol, the same there. And as you notice with the med administration, they're pretty similar. And then Narcan, and CPAP, and blood glucose. So, those were all sent out for review. Any thoughts on the skill sheets themselves?
Just back on the first page, CPR verification, sorry, second page there, yes, CPR verification.
Uh-huh.
Second page. Keep going. You got, CPR class taken in semester, so it's gonna say in year. Within
Oh,
that year.
yes, yep.
Be satisfied with the requirement.
Any other comments, concerns?
Just a couple of questions. On some of these, for instance, the Narcan administration, you have to do a CME sheet. Am I correct on that still? CME sheet would be all at Narcan administration?
It's in here as a skill sheet.
No, and there's a CQI after the administration of field Narcan by BLS.
Oh, a CQI sheet, you mean? So if you're in the opioid overdose program and receiving your Narcan from our office, the answer is yes.
Okay. The reason I'm leading up to that is, would it not be acceptable, much like with the ALS CMEs, or provide PCR numbers to show that you've done that field skill if you're doing a CQI sheet afterwards? Do they need to redo that skill if they've already done that skill during the year?
Are they doing it correctly?
That's,
Who's verified they're doing that correctly?
well, by the CQI sheet, you get the information that you're looking for. Because it does have outcomes on there, et cetera.
It's discussion for the group. I mean, I think that it's good training for them to do that. And of course, if you're setting up they're supposed to do the whole, part of the QA/QI process is that they have annual education on these BLS adjuncts, if you will, each and every one of them. And I'm not 100% convinced that all agencies have had the resources to do these. And my plan is to try and set up education days in each county, and at the beginning of the year, put out a yearly schedule so that they'll have opportunities.
I was just looking for alternatives, that's all. To spending more and more class time, for these people. And there are some higher volume agencies out there where this could be a common occurrence. So, as far as the administration goes, he's just giving another avenue. That's all I'm trying to do, is look for something else.
And I certainly understand that, and again, it's only my opinion, is that when they submitted their applications to do any of these adjuncts, part of that application process, they agreed to do continuous quality improvement with their service medical director, as well as annual training of these adjuncts.
Anyway, I was just gonna say that here's what you gotta balance, and I'm absolutely sensitive to how much time you're tying up students in a classroom, an already busy work life. It's easier administratively to have a full set of skills versus trying to figure out, did they do it, did they have the right QA versus not. And I'm gonna offer, as a CME manager or the agency trying to figure this out, it becomes a bigger deal. For the 5 minutes it takes to go through this versus not, I'm gonna offer administratively, it's a lot cleaner, it's a lot better legally, that is documented for the provider and the student to go that way. I've had Remacs do it both ways, and now most everybody's saying, they used to, like innovation, if you got a field tube during the year or quarter, you didn't have to do CMEs on innovation, or you started an IV. We've gotten away from all that because it's too hard to administrate when you did and when you didn't, and then somebody falls through the gaps, and then there's a legal challenge over it, okay? The Remac and the agency own a tremendous amount of liability, just a thought.
Further discussion?
I just want to add my comment. I think as me being a CME manager and as an operations manager, it's cleaner to have them come in and spend 5 minutes to go through the skill, because those skills are not going to take up at all. And I've had both career staff and volunteer staff, and to me, it's a lot easier documentation.
They're already there doing the skills. I mean, they're gonna have to do the nebulized epinephrine and blood glucose and everything else. So to say squirt some Narcan nasally is a 3 or 4 minute event for something they're already there, I don't see the harm in saying you've gotta do it personally.
Yes, we do.
I make a motion to pass the program on CISO and with correction.
Any further discussion? I think Mark did. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay,
Okay,
we're gonna
so-
go back to state EMS
Oops.
meetings.
Let's grab the other half of this quick like. So then I did add in the information into the provider credentialing manual, so I had to update that. try to highlight the changes, so basically I changed this to read certified, above the level of certified first responder. So I changed EMT to CFR. Changed the criteria for the Remac certification will be derived from the standardized New York State EMS collaborative protocols for ALS and BLS protocols. The other changes I made is I just removed the 2015 protocol update exam information, so I caught a few other updates while I was doing this. Again, this was sent out. So I put EMT in the graph there as skills only. So one of the things that we get a lot of questions on, so I added this in there. So again, a maximum credit hours, 12 hours for a specific class, 24 hours may be credited for teaching EMS-related training courses, but again, we should be okay with that for what our regional CMEs require. And the reporting system would stay the same. It would be on file. Again, I added EMT classes in there, so the skill requirements from an original or refresher EMT course would satisfy your CME scenario requirements for any semester in which you successfully completed the practical skills exam. I probably should change that to year. Because they've had the class, they should have been doing those scenarios in the classroom. So I will change semester to year, if that makes sense to everybody. This is all the same stuff that we've had in there. Again, BLS providers will need to complete defibrilation and adjunct skills annually prior to December 31st was added. And then in the non-compliance, BLS providers will not be able to provide any adjunct treatments that their agency is approved for if they're non-compliant. And then this is where it has the $25. If the information that we previously approved, again, I changed down here the skills demonstration by the agency training officer because we no longer have NCEMS CME evaluators. So that was kind of an old change that I caught in two different spots. So special situations, again, CME managers should note that a provider is on medical leave in the comment section online when entering CMEs. So that's just kind of an educational point, and that's the same comment under military leave, because then I don't call the agency wondering why their CMEs are not done, and again, if they're out on medical leave, they can't do those CMEs, so at that time. Same with our military folks. Those are my changes as presented. Any questions, comments, concerns?
Should you change CFR to EMR or whatever it is now?
The state, and John can clarify this, the state for some reason is still going with CFR instead of EMR.
Yeah, that's within the code.
Okay.
Okay,
The code is
That's fine.
CFR.
yes.
Under training, American Heart Association seems to have a lot of courses represented with NAEMT courses such as Advanced Medical Life Support, the Advanced Burn Life Support, PHTLS, ATLS, the applicable modalities that we could list and break down so that it's not unclear to some CME managers out in the various agencies.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't put them in, but I can certainly, well, it has a National Association of EMTs.
Okay, but the specific breakdown of hours up above, if you scroll up. Okay, there, it is there, I'm sorry, I missed just the EHTLS.
Well, actually, we either need to remove the maximum credit hours or change these to max. So that actually,
One other point of discussion, if I might, on this. When you start referencing these national curriculums as they're currently sit, you've developed the document today, and 2 weeks from now, the national committee meets and changes those numbers, you have to revise the document every time you do that. I would offer you might want to just develop a strategy that just kind of globally covers it, so every time you nationally meet, you don't have to change your base document. That would be a recommendation, because I had another Remac that did it, defined it down to the hour, and then all of a sudden, when the course changed, it didn't meet it, they accepted the card, and then that created a whole hassle. So just a thought.
so actually, they should have sign-in out sheets, and agendas for this. If they're keeping this for their New York State CME program, they're required to have all that supporting documentation, which is one of the things I find a lot of folks don't realize, that if you're taking these classes, you need to have your sign-in, sign-out sheet, a copy of that for your ACLS, PALS, et cetera. So I would recommend that we actually remove those hours and leave just the general statement above.
If, there's also a minimum of 3 hours CME, is that a minimum or maximum for bloodborne pathogen, PPE and hazmat? Is that something that is going to be applicable to all levels? And would that then change the BLS requirement for hours from 0 up to, possibly 3 or whatever is required to meet those courses?
I think you lost me.
As in, we have to have annual bloodborne pathogen, updates. There's a hazmat update annually for all EMS providers, and, that would then qualify for the basic EMT as being a minimum hourly requirement for those courses. Could that be built in and included under the,
So at this time, we haven't included didactic hours
yeah,
for them?
that would be considered a didactic hourly requirement for all levels. Would that not be applicable to stipulate that that will be included for all levels, including basic EMTs, because they are subject to that training annually?
It certainly could be. I think that, at this point, the decision was to do skills only at this
Okay.
point, so the Remac could certainly reconsider that. But I would have to rewrite the whole manual.
Sorry about
Not
What-
the whole
what-
manual, but I would have to
what-
then reference didactic time. So, I mean, that's a Remac decision. For our
I think
ALS.
we talked about walking before we ran, see how
Yeah.
this goes first, because the last thing you wanted was to lose all our EMTs in the field. So, we can see how
Could I
this
offer,
goes.
could I offer that we're mixing apples and oranges when you get into all the federal requirements? Because that's Fed OSHA's jurisdiction. It's not the state of New York or Article 30 preview. So I would offer that, frankly, leaving those hours out totally, let the feds deal with it, might be a cleaner way to deal with this document. Just a thought. But I don't want to interpret federal regulations as the state guy, because they get me in trouble. So, but just for the record, but just something to think about. Well, government and government.
And I agree with that for right now. Again, it is the Remac's responsibility, for these adjuncts, if you'll call them, whatever you wanna name them, the CPAP, the syringe epinephrine is being taught in classes, but I think it's good that the Remac reinforces that, but, Narcan, blood glucometry, albuterol, and CPAP. I always forget one. So back to the hours here, would you recommend that I just take the specific hours out and then just leave that general statement up above that I had added with the minimum hours?
I would concur with that, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mark, for bringing that up. Okay. So I would entertain a motion to approve of the
For the
changes.
document for the changes. Maya. opposed? Out of the EMS meetings? All right.
Go back up to the EMS meeting, so I was thinking that Debbie Foltz was doing this report, we're getting that, she's doing it for the Rumsco. Let me see what we have to. So starting after the January council meeting, a newsletter will be coming out from the Bureau to increase communications with folks, so, I'm not sure who all they're sending that to, but I will make sure it gets out to this group. The CC to paramedic program will be opening up applications in January. It was discussed, and this was their vision, it was not on paper, that there'd be a $1,500 upfront cost for the program that can be vouchered for by the agencies upon successful completion of the program. FISDAP exams will have to be completed after each of the 6 modules. There'll be 6 modules. That's what they found in their gap analysis of the critical care to paramedic education, followed by skills. And I can't remember exactly how many skills, but it was like chest tube management, surgical airway, needle crite, 12 leads.
I think it was 5 you said before.
There's one, at least one more, I don't remember what it was, and Debbie couldn't remember what it was either. But again, that we'll get more information on that. The CME program changes are in process of being finalized. Instructors will be updated soon, the program to come up to providers following that. So I just put in a broad timeline, it's sometime between October and the beginning, in the first quarter of next year. There's been a lot of staff changes at the Bureau, and Mike Taylor and Richard Brandt have left. They've taken promotions, and I just got an email that Tom Bahana, who's handled our program agency vouchers and contracts and was awesome, is leaving. So John McMillan has been hired in the Albany office, and then New York City and Buffalo got new regional reps, and there's a couple new interns that we may be hearing from that are working with the Bureau out of the University of Albany, and I had the opportunity to meet them at the meetings. So a change for agencies are being inspected. My understanding is regional representatives have some new laptops, and they'll eventually be doing some more stuff electronically, so when you get your agency inspection by DOH, you may not get that standard yellow sheet. Trying to think of things I'm not gonna talk about in my report.
Why are you grinning, John? The voice is in his head.
There was a discussion on fentanyl, transmucosal administration, and approving it on a case-by-case basis and with local Remac approval. There was further discussion on whether the route of the medication should be voted on by the CMAC and SEMSCO, or just the approval of the medication, but ultimately they voted on it and passed it, so agency, we'll probably have to look at how we're gonna deal with that as a Remac. We will talk about ambulance transfusion services at the end. I did send you out a great deal of information on that. There will be a new instructor policy coming out. I was trying to pick out the things that are pertinent to this body.
Friendly amendment, and I believe you mean there'll be a new policy out on the CME program, the continuing medical education. They're gonna clarify the stuff that's on the changes in the forms. And there's gonna be an instructor thing too, but there's that as well. I think.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, I think those are the big items for this group. If anybody wants to know the whole thing, Debbie will have a report, or I'm happy to share my notes with you.
Does anyone have any questions for me? Okay,
And I may have included some stuff in my other report that I'll catch.
all right, other old business? Okay.
So, RSI on there was some concern about reciprocity from people who are already credentialed in other regions and have taken other airway training programs. We have amended the policy statement to read, must complete an advanced airway management training program. And we will offer the difficult airway management program locally. Other classes may be presented to the RSI committee for evaluation. There's also a statement on reciprocity that, again, we will review the training program, and if it's appropriate, grant it. There needs to be proof of
Hold on a
attendance.
second, 'cause she's,
Sorry.
she's here.
Well, no, I was there, and then I tried to change the view, and it screwed it up. There it is.
So, basically it allows the RSI committee and this body to evaluate other appropriate training programs, whether it's through a medical director or an actual course. And the reciprocity statement is below it.
Well, every time I do that, there's a reciprocity statement, can you see it now? Whoa. There we go. We didn't have anything before. Oh. So that was just, all new providers for RSI must complete an advanced airway management training program. NCEMS will offer the difficult airway management class locally. Other classes may be presented to the RSI committee for evaluation. So again, if they've taken another airway management course that deals with this, and my understanding is Central New York has offered some, and they have proof that they attended that class and the objectives so that it can be reviewed by the committee for accept, and then ultimately approved by the medical director as being accepted or not.
To clarify, this does not remove the testing element. The actual physical testing and didactic testing is not being waived because of the reciprocity. So I need a motion to change the statute.
Is that the only changes in it?
Yep.
We had talked about at our meeting about, having, specific times to test people, because we didn't wanna get one this week and set up for Dr. Maynard or Dr. Delaney, and people to be there to test them, and then get another one the next week, and, because there's a lot of setting up to do the testing, so that we weren't, trying to do more. Do you wanna put something in there about, at a maximum, it'll be offered once a month or something, so that we're not doing that this week, and again next week, and the following week, and all of a sudden these come in and people want to come online?
Testing will be offered a minimum of once a quarter.
I mean, do we need it in the policy statement?
I think you do.
I'm okay with putting it in there, but
Like I said, we just didn't wanna see, because of all the stuff that does have to happen and trying to get people together, that all of a sudden all these people are gonna be ready to come online, and you're gonna be doing,
put it in there.
it's up to you, I'm just asking.
Any other
I'm sorry.
further discussion? So can I have a motion with those changes? Second? All in favor? Any opposed? All right, any other old business? All right, program agency report.
I would ask that we all bow our heads for a moment in a moment of silence in memory of Ray Filkey, who was with us for a long time, who we recently lost. So we could have a moment of silence for Ray. Thank you. I've had the opportunity to work with Ray since even before I came to the North Country, and he will be greatly missed. And just a real quick note before I start, there has been a little bit of a change in how our state reps are gonna be working. So John, are you gonna address that, or you want me to talk about that?
You can, I can, whatever you like to
Okay.
do.
So, John will be here in the North Country for any issues that we may have, unless it has to do with narcotics. Mike Bogozzi will be doing all narcotics. And then with the opposite, all Part 18s, irregardless of where they are in the central area, will be handled by John. So that's just a quick update there. All right, we'll start off with RSTAC and RTAC. All right, so the Stroke Advisory Committee and the Trauma Advisory Committee for the region. I attended the June 22nd and September 10th meetings. The next meetings will be December 14th. So the state trauma report will be released in October. And one of the things that they discussed is that SUNY Upstate has a new burn unit director coming, Dr. Dolanak, who is currently the burn director there, will be remaining, but she'll be focusing on some other projects. And out of the stroke, the state is transitioning to a third-party designation of stroke centers. That transition is ongoing, and it does not appear that TPA-capable or acute stroke-ready hospitals will be included in this. So again, it's just something that we have to make sure that we're really paying attention to with the education. With transport times being so great, we do not want patients to be outside the window of receiving TPA. And we'll have to watch as protocols change, etc. Transport decision to go to a comprehensive versus a primary stroke center was discussed. There was discussion that in Syracuse and the surrounding areas that they want to endorse the FAST ED, and we made a motion at our last REMSCO meeting to utilize that scale. But they wanted to kind of regionally put out the directive in Syracuse and around that if the FAST ED was greater than 2 and the onset within 24 hours, go to a comprehensive stroke center. So I think that as the North Country, that may be discussions that we have to have and we have to keep in the back of our mind. And so where are we going to go with that based on the literature and the research? And we now have 2 comprehensive stroke centers in Syracuse. Krause is comprehensive, as well as SUNY Upstate. St. Joe's is a primary as well. So the FAST ED helps recognize large vessel occlusions, and there's an app for that. Gotta love that. It makes it very easy for providers to use. Thoughts, discussions in regards to destinations for stroke patients? All right, we'll come back to that. Moving on, I even threw the FAST ED up there if somebody asked me a question. Well, no, I mean, I just think. Well, no, they said that they were going to use that for the Syracuse and surrounding areas, but we're afraid that that probably wouldn't work up here with our transport times. So I think it's something that I put out there for the group to think about.
How many satellite locations are there up here in the North Country?
Well, right now, all of our North Country hospitals in the Tri-County area are TPA capable. And again, if we start using the FAST ED,
I think it's important because sometimes it's called your medical control, and involves your medical control, get the vital information, last known well, get an active check, what's your fast ED score. And then it relies on the medical control to determine where to go based on that information. I don't know what they're doing in other rural areas in the state.
They're having the same kind of discussions you're having right here.
yeah, I mean, this is all new, so.
It's all new, and that's kind of where it is. I personally think you can never, go wrong with medical control, because I think there's a number of things that factor into this discussion, okay? Yes, all right, the 24-hour window, but we do get weather up here. And sometimes moving these patients in the weather is, long distances, is sometimes a bigger risk than the actual stroke you're dealing with. I know, I grant you, yes, they need to get definitive care and so forth, but there are a lot of logistical things that go into this. And the other problem is, for many ambulance services, now all of a sudden taking my only community ambulance out of service for 8 hours to go take somebody to Syracuse is another community struggle, okay, when we already have thin staffing to begin with. I mean, I'm not trying to, but I mean, generally we're not staffed up as well as we'd like. So I think there's a bunch of things there that need to kind of factor into the discussion. Some places are talking about, as an example, do mutual aid where we'll start somebody from the Syracuse up to meet and do a transfer mid transfer to get that resource back and then get the other one back. Well, there's a whole bunch of pros and cons to that. The pros are it takes the primary ambulance out of the community, less time. The downside of that is how do you get it reimbursed? Okay, those are discussions people are having. And I think those are things you need to consider in this.
And I would also add to consider animal health rights.
Right.
And again, I think the important thing is involving the med control sometimes, and looking specifically for that population of patients from LVS, right? And so not the one with a minute skill score, that would be great at a primary center.
Well, that's kind of what I'm saying, that kind of not all strokes are,
The same.
right, yeah, and so, again, up here, medical control makes a lot of sense. What some folks are thinking about doing is creating a document for the region for guidance for that online physician. I don't know. I can see pros and cons to that. I mean, I don't know the right answers to that. In other words, for some physicians who aren't as familiar with the geography, if you're getting somebody who's with the logistics of, God bless you, of moving somebody, some regions are thinking of that. Again, we're still very much in the exploring part of this, to be fair. Okay, fair enough.
I just needed to plan it in everybody's minds for thought moving forward. Medical director changes, Lewis County Search and Rescue from Dr. Howland to Dr. Purcell. I would entertain a motion for that.
All in favor? Any opposed?
So we've provided BLSFR paperwork to the following agencies. As I said, DeGrasse, Claire, South Russell were the only ones that returned and were approved at this point. A couple pad notifications. Excuse me, the Diocese of Ogdensburg, and then a couple updates. At the last meeting, we approved a medical director change for Clarkson University EMS, so they updated their pad. And then the dental office in Watertown. So, we have applications applications for Beaver Falls Ambulance to do BLS Narcan, BLS CPAP, for Cranberry Lake Fire Department to do BLS blood glucometry, and they've already received their limited lab license. So I would entertain a motion to approve those.
All in favor? Any opposed?
And we received syringe epinephrine notices for Clarkson University EMS along with Beaver Falls Ambulance, and that Clarkson University updated their albuterol forms. We are still waiting on Cape Vincent Ambulance's limited lab. I went to Waddington and assisted them with their application, and they have received theirs.
So then Cape Vincent should have received theirs already?
I would, yep. Yep. So we'll be following up again on that. We have a few other things to follow up with them. So during the Lewis County Fair, I went over and haunted Lewis County Search and Rescue for a bit. Had a grand day at the fair and did an ambulance inspection. So I know that's pretty small and you probably can't see it, but just a list of our EPCR agencies, and newly added under Image Trend is Madrid Rescue in Rensselaer Falls in St. Lawrence County. So we have quite a few of them. And moving forward, we have Cranberry Lake and Seaway Valley, both working on going live with Image Trend. Waddington, Beaver Falls, and Star Lake are looking at EMS charts, although Beaver Falls may go to Image Trend at this point. Hopefully shooting for the first of the year will be with Forte IPCR software, will be Constableville, J.S. Coster, and West Leiden out of Lewis County. So that's kind of exciting. We have so many more coming electronic. One of the forms that we need as they transition from the NEMSIS data set that we're currently on to B3, which is in process, are these updated forms. And we've been trying to get them from the following agencies: Carthage, Colton, Herman, and R.D. Lawrence, without success. We've been sending them weekly reminders, so if anybody knows someone there that can assist us with getting those, would be helpful. So we've been working, J.S. Coster was behind on sending their PCRs in. We're working with Lewis County Emergency Management to get those sent in. And Redwood, again, was behind. They have notified us that they would be sending them in. So the Coverdale Stroke Program that we've been participating in, this has got a lot to do with the Image Trend system. We continue to have weekly conference calls. We're learning this system. We have 6 agencies that have gone live with Image Trend. 2 of them, the 2 that I noted, the new ones, but the other ones were utilizing another vendor, and they moved over to the Image Trend system. And then Beaver Falls and Seaway, hopefully they'll be moving to, or 2 of the paper agencies we hope to bring on board with Image Trend as well. And Colton already has EMS charts, but they are considering going to Image Trend at this point. So here is a great thing that's coming. This is Hospital Hub. It is part of the Coverdale Stroke Program, so they're building it, they're paying for it. It comes out of that grant. And basically what it's going to do is allow the hospitals to go in and see any chart for a patient that's transported to their facility as soon as the chart's done. So it should solve that age-old problem of we didn't get the PCR. If it's not there, you know, we'll have to look at why. But this should ultimately, you know, the hospital will just be able to go in and get their charts. So I think this is exciting. I have a meeting next Thursday-ish, I believe, on this in Sarah I'll be looking for the physician's assistants here and, you know, getting to the folks at the hospital, and I think this will be great. This is gonna be helpful to EMS agencies. They won't be faxing their PCRs anymore because it'll automatically be there. Once the back end of all vendors will actually be mapped in on the back end to our regional bridge. And then the hospital hub works off that, so you can go in and get your PCRs. Or they'll be right there. So, it's pretty exciting, and again, hopefully it'll solve that age-old problem of, PCRs not getting to the hospital because they'll automatically be able to go in and get them. Right now, a lot of hospitals do that with EMS charts. So, they'll have to identify the appropriate people, you know, like medical records, or, you know, so the hospitals will have logins to the regional, or to this hospital hub. So, it has other uses, but we won't go there now. We'll keep it simple. So, I think that's exciting. And what's even more exciting about this whole program, this whole Covered Out program and this regional bridge that we're diligently working on, is once the state gets everybody mapped over to it and onto the NEMSIS version 3 data set, we will actually be able to start pulling quality metrics that we could track here as a region. And we will have the majority of the agencies coming in here in one spot. So it's not like I have to go into software for 3 or 4 different vendors. So it's very exciting. And I believe that at the state, they are talking about quality metrics that they're going to require the program agencies to pull. So the CMAC will have to decide on those, and we'll probably be hearing more about those at the January state meetings. But we can do more things, you know, so we have a better idea for our region what's going on. And I'm excited about that, because that's something we should have been doing all along as a Remac, and we just haven't had the capacity to pull that information. So these are the agencies that have set up CME sessions for this next semester for the ALS folks. As you see, we don't have a whole lot of them. And again, those are posted on the calendar on our website. So CME semesters, in the end of the last semester, we had 14 providers were suspended, 2 were reinstated due to a manager error, where they forgot to hit the save button after they put them in. 3 were fined for second suspensions in 3 years. Fines have been paid and CMEs completed. 1 was reinstated after completed CMEs, and we had 1 no affiliation letter sent. Some of these providers were previously suspended and remain suspended. Some trainings that we've done, we did the difficult airway training, which was actually, you know, Mark and Paul, Justin, if you have anything to add to that, we actually had a pretty good training session. I should ask Melissa, she was there as a attendee. So, that was great. We hope to do another one January 26th-ish. So that was very well received. So with the implementation plan for the BLS CMEs, we've had 143 EMTs have registered as of 9/28/18. We sent letters out to agencies. We did kind of an agency update and identify their CME managers and their current contact information. We've had very poor response from that. As you can see, there's the numbers in Jefferson County. We got, and again, these are going out to your BLSFRs first. We got 10 as well. We got 10 back from Jefferson County out of 33, Lewis County 2 out of 8, St. Lawrence County 11 of 38. So if you receive that, please send it in and encourage them to do that for other agencies you may be involved with. So now that we have the final approval on the requirements, I can outline a letter to go out to the agencies. And I've not scheduled any training because I don't have all the CME manager information. And, so we disregard the didactic hours there, just the skills, which is what we decided on before, and I didn't take it out of the PowerPoint. We already did that, beautiful. So the STEMI program has been going very well. We actually have a couple of uses, so we may have some very positive data to report. I do have a group of agencies that have done absolutely nothing with this, despite the fact we provided them with the equipment. So next on our agenda of big decisions is what we're going to do, whether we're going to take the equipment back or see if we can get them to do something, because there's paperwork that needs to be submitted. So hopefully that continues to grow, and that grant will end this year, so hopefully. So EM Resource, the contract was approved. This week we'll be starting work sessions with a company to build the dashboard for the hospitals. I sent emails out to all the hospitals. The only, for some reason, I just talked to Justin about it, is my Lewis County, when I emailed Lewis County Hospital, they're all coming back on me. So I do have to catch up with them, but we'll need some system administrators. I've had the following hospitals: Canton, Potsdam, Samaritan, River, and Governor. Hospitals are the only ones that have replied to me. So the other hospitals, we do need to get representatives for that, and I'll be continuing to work on that. So I discussed at the last meeting a New York State Health grant that we applied for, Operation Lifeline, that we did not receive that when we made a call back to them. It was a highly competitive grant. We were on the edge. The one thing that we probably could have done better is worked on the sustainability part of it. So Westchester, our program agency director meeting, asked if any regions were interested in doing a TXA demonstration project for them. Thoughts on that? Okay, I'm thinking now. Huh?
In trauma country, it would be really nice. And we don't have very much focus on it.
I mean, our medical folks use TXA, right? It's still on, well, LifeNet, you still have TXA?
We've opted out of it for the time being because, University of Rochester, our medical director, Dr. Dalton, has looked into a lot of the studies surrounding it. And the statistical information puts you right on the fence. So there's not enough to say, yes, absolutely, and there's not enough to say, no, absolutely not. So right now, we're kind of waiting.
And that's,
So the military uses it all the time, and their data is very compelling, that it's a worthwhile agent to have on board for the patient population. And up here, Rochester doesn't use it, and actually frowns upon it when patient arrives from their ED with it, but Albany, Westchester, and upstate support is used.
As well as Burlington,
Burlington.
University of Burlington. Military's last week control set was only like 200 people, and the information gathered from that was less than optimal because they actually changed policies and procedures halfway through the study.
So anyway, I think that it's because we don't flush stuff here, we don't go to Rochester, we go to Syracuse and those are two trauma centers. So,
Of the trauma centers along the thruway and north, the only one that doesn't use it is Rochester. LifeNet in New York is going to continue to use it as long as we're able.
what do they mean by doing the demonstration project?
so it'll be kind of like the check and inject with the syringe epinephrine, where they're trying to show that it's beneficial and can be utilized and added to the formulary of pre-hospital medications. So it would be a controlled study.
I guess I would just be curious, Dr. Cartier,
But we will continue to be giving TXA, to our patients for the time being. And like I said, I've not heard any change plan for the guidelines right now.
What are they looking for? Because there's nothing to really support. There's no
I
project
don't-
up there to say, yes, we agree with this, or no, we don't.
I don't have that information. I was just trying to fill out the Remac to see if it's something to think about. So,
As I understand it, talking to the program agency director, the plan is that they're looking for other participants to look and to increase their pool of patients to look at this with pros and cons and so forth, and they're going through the RFP component to get this approved. And they're
So
looking,
it was like the check and eject where you had to fill out a
Right.
form and send it in if you used it.
Right.
So they could capture that data and have that put together in the reports.
basically, yeah. I mean, it's not uncommon, it is when we do these, to ask other regions who want to try it, to do it, you know what I'm trying to say? And, you know, personal opinion, I think that you guys are in a unique situation here, that you have a lot of trauma up here, but you don't have access to, you know, trauma centers. And this may buy some time, which is, follows kind of the military model of where they've had great success with it. So again, I mean, I read the military stuff too, and I see it more as a pros than a con. But that being said, it's just a request if you want to participate.
It really should be up to the agencies then.
but I think the Remac has to kind of give it a blessing, and then we could, you know, if the Remac's comfortable, maybe get more information on it, and then putting that out to the physicians and moving forward or not
Right.
that way.
For what it's worth, this one is one that doesn't cost a lot of money. The TSA is dirt cheap in terms of its cost. Yeah, I mean, it's where some of these projects before have been very expensive to go out and do for the services. But this one is, I mean, it's dirt cheap. I've forgotten, but
It's like $8 a dose or
yeah,
something.
it's like, I was gonna say under $10, yeah.
It's very cheap,
Yeah, and interestingly, correct me if I'm wrong, my memory of this is a little foggy, but this was used in maternity patients initially as a way for pre-opting or for.
It's one of the only approved by the FDA uses, actually.
Right, and that was where it was started. Well, there's another use that potentially here in the North Country may have some use. So just throw that out, that, you know, it's out there. Again, like any of this, you've got to have study data to get those off-label uses approved, and that's what this is about. I mean, as an example, New York City, remember the Dr. Freeze with the whole hypothermia post-Ross patients? They got 6 months into it and they stopped it because the data was so compelling that it was not helping. And then similarly, we may figure that out here, but we'll see. But that's some examples of what they were, studies that were done before and type thing, but not uncommon to have somebody ask.
That'd be great, and if we could get more information in December.
I'm sorry.
That would be wonderful if we could get more information in December as it comes out.
Okay, I will do that. All right, so, we'll be working on, with the collaborative protocol group to roll out the AMT changes that were approved previously, which actually just brought them up to the, stuff that's within their scope of practice that was inadvertently left out of the initial collaborative protocols. And then I need some thoughts for a regional study to submit. That I can pull off electronic data. So you guys can think about that till, new business, then we'll bring it back up. Because I know they want to see a 12-lead again. Sorry. do all PCR vendors have, for those of you who utilize other ones, do you have to choose the type of, do you like choose 12 lead in a drop-down box?
Enough chart to do.
I know with the MS charts you do, but I'm not familiar with all the other vendors, so. All right, we can come back to that in a minute. So that is the end of my report, but I am a little remiss in saying that we probably should have started out in introducing some of our new members. Some are members of the REMSCO too, but Jim Chestnut from St. Lawrence County is joining us. Melissa Brook from St. Lawrence County is an ALS provider. Matt Yelton is joining us on the Remac as I have the positions on here as an ALS provider. And Miss Jennifer Hines from St. Lawrence County is BLS representation. And Dr. Cartier, we spoke about earlier. Do you want to, I told we had correspondence in your application, which we will be voting on. I didn't know if you wanted to tell them a little more about yourself.
I can, sure. I've been in EMT for about 16 years now and a paramedic for 12. Medical school at University of New England, and then just finished my emergency medicine residency at Darnell Army Medical Center at Fort Hood. I'm the flight surgeon and medical director for 310 GSAB, so the medevac unit up on Fort Drum, in addition to some other stuff that we do with that unit, but that's my main task right now.
Great, thank you. So, and we will be voting on you under new business. And Bobby Simpson, who's on our REMSCO as well, but joining us as a BLS provider. And did I get Mark's been here. You're not new this time, right? Okay, that's it. Thank you. I'm done. We are new business, so. Approval of Dr. Cartier for membership, so.
And motion.
Okay,
All in favor? Any opposed?
welcome. They were so quick on the motions, I didn't have time to have to step out of the room.
Bloody decision on that one.
That should worry you.
Do that under other new business. All right, so now I'm gonna bring up that ambulance transfusion service. I sent information out on that. Any questions? I have a lot of things open. I was trying to find my ambulance transfusion. So basically what they're saying is that for hospitals, even if you send a nurse, that is not acceptable, that each EMS agency that's doing transports must have an ambulance transfusion approval, become an ATS. They are simplifying the process, which still requires a lot of paperwork. So my thought process was, we have 2 agencies currently now that are ATSs, and mind you, since this regulation was approved, I think 2015 is when they came out with the policy statement, across the state, out of 1,200 agencies, there are only 12, I believe, ATSs, because the paperwork is onerous at best.
It's fun. It's Wadsworth's interpretation of regulations is unique.
So, irregardless, I, thought that maybe I could work with Mark Beavers and Justin Astafan, who are the leaders of the only 2 services who have their ambulance transfusion service approved, to template some stuff to help other agencies. And then again, we will be sending out correspondence regarding all of this, but I think it's going to be important, especially for the physicians that are here, to help support us at the hospital level, and making sure that the blood banks are working with our ambulance services, and that these agreements and the training, et cetera, it has to be a joint effort between the hospital, the blood banks, the service medical directors, and the agencies. So, and as I said, the paperwork is onerous. If you had an opportunity to watch that video, which I sent out to you, it explains all of it. I actually took the time to screenshot every one of those slides off the webcast, so you guys could print out a PowerPoint. So.
And if I could, the important thing that the hospitals need to understand here is this. Each individual hospital has to have an agreement with each individual ambulance service. So, and this was brought up openly at the air medical side, okay, that if you have a region and you cover 30 hospitals, you have to have 30 relationships. The Wadsworth folks are going based on the DOH interpretation of our attorneys, just for the record, that's where they're getting it from. And this is no different than we've run into other interpretations over the years for many things. As an example, everybody remembers the infamous Ed Ronsky thing where EMS workers aren't on the list of people who can work in a 405 facility, AKA a hospital. So if we go up on a floor and take a blood pressure or do something, we just violated the public health code. And this is kind of the similar interpretation. I think what was new that was laid out, which was the real kind of, oh, by the way moment of this was that license that the hospital has to do blood products is only good inside the four walls of the hospital. The sending of staff is no longer acceptable. And that was the big ticket item there. And it puts, frankly, emergency room docs in a very tough place. There's no question about that. We're supposed to have a staff call here later this week, and I'm looking for more guidance, but that's about all I know, literally, other than what I've just shared.
So where is the responsibility on the state for notifying the hospitals? Have they notified the CEOs?
I believe, if my memory serves me correctly, when this passed back in 2015, there was a Dear CEO letter, I believe.
Which
Okay.
most emergency departments don't have access to.
I get it, I get it. That's why I'm putting the plug in here for each and every hospital needs to go back and make sure they understand now that all of a sudden, well, wait a minute, I just did it with one. What do you mean I gotta do it with 10 others now? If you wanna have ways to get patients out of the facilities, you gotta do this, okay?
Are you having a meeting with the state later this week?
I'm having a staff meeting of the EMS program staff.
If you have an opportunity to speak to the state, I think it's probably a great idea. Only 12 of 1,200 ambulances are certified, that perhaps they don't need to send another CEO letter. And I think presenting it at the CMAC has lit a fire under everyone. So.
I think, yeah, I think that probably, I will definitely put that on the list of suggestions and take that back. Realize that came from, I believe the Dear CEO letter was signed by Mark Hennessy, and I'm drawing a blank on the physician who was from the labs, who basically were the ones who put that out at the time. But that's where we are with this at the moment. There was a motion made by the state councils, the CMAC physicians, to do a letter to the commissioner's office requesting a 1-year hold on this to allow agencies to get up to speed and so forth. I have no idea where that is or isn't, but that was on the public record. I mean, that was talked about openly.
Yes.
And I have no new news. There's no new, as of, well, probably 2 o'clock when I checked my emails, I hadn't seen anything new, but doesn't mean. This was clearly generated a number of conversations during the break and so forth out there. Clinically, it's a very awkward situation because, well, remember that the blood regs thing the blood reg thing goes back, help me out, 04 was it?
5, 6, somewhere
It
in
was
that area.
back a while
A
ago.
while ago. This started, back under Ronsky, because what happened, without getting terribly digressing here for 30 seconds, there used to be a part of the code back in the ancient days of doing, in the first Part 800, Article 30, 1975. When you got to ALS, it said, well, whatever you and the medical director online agree to, that defines the scope of practice, is what an EMT can, or an AEMT or a paramedic could do. And some of us remember those days of, hi doc, you want me to do this? Yeah, okay, well, okay, done, okay? That went on, well, that created a lot of inconsistencies. So back in 93, was the 93, and I'm looking at Ann, but 93-ish, they did the first major review where they put the curriculums in and defined the scope of practice much more narrowly for EMS workers. And it was discovered, based until 04, when this issue came up, about blood transfusions, and the EMS workers weren't on the list in the blood transfusion regs to transfer blood. So everybody, and the blood bankers all said, absolutely, EMS should be doing this. It's imperative, it's life-saving. It just took 10 years to get the regs through. Now, I'm also offer that I don't think anyone, when they were developing them, I think saw this interpretation coming down, if you will. I think there was a different view of integration of it, and it kind of got lost in the weeds over the years because we had two different bureau directors, one started one, went from there. And that's why and then as it got out and people started applying and there were concerns about the length of the process, so the two ladies showed up who are lab techs, weren't clinical folks, they're lab techs, came out and said, hi, here's the reg, here's the interpretation, we've talked to the attorneys, this is how it goes. And typical, there's that division between a New York State reg, between pre-hospital and in-hospital. And we aren't on the in-hospital side, so you have to create a regulatory structure for the pre-hospital care side. Trouble was we missed the integration, and this was one of those things when it finally went through, it got passed in the 90-day register, and bam, it went in. And nobody ever really asked until we brought them to CMAC, and really, it's one of those, you ask the questions, you may not like the answers, and we got answers that turned out to be very hard. What they are saying at the moment is they will turn around any application, and Ann, help me if I got this wrong, 2 weeks. They're willing to look, if it's complete, they're looking to turn it around in about a 2-week period. But as anybody who's been through this, to get a complete application is probably a couple of months worth of work at a part-time level. Yeah.
Months, not a couple, like months.
So this is one of those times, if the hospital, you want blood to get transferred out of your facility, maybe you need to sit down and start working with EMS a little more diligently, because as an example, in the Southern Tier, I have one particular group of hospitals, I can't get a narcotics renewal application through their attorneys in anything less than 3 months, even with a rush. So, and that's what's gonna have to happen, because you're gonna do contracting, and the attorneys are gonna get in the middle of this, da-da-da-da-da-da. A suggestion perhaps, Fort Drum Health Alliance folks, if they brought the hospitals together and agree on a nomenclature of a common contract, that might help speed this along, because that's one of the places where it stumbles.
And that's one of the things that we're looking at moving forward. But first, we wanted to discuss it here. We wanted to ensure that our folks here were taking it back to their hospitals. We also need to notify all of our agencies who do transports, which is a handful of them, so that will not be a difficult job. Because for our agencies, again, they have to do paperwork with each hospital they transport from. So if they transport from more than one hospital, they you know, we'll hopefully be able to use that as a template for the other hospitals and make it easier. Again, my understanding is, and what I do have to look, and I don't know the answer to, is they were updating all the forms. As of state meetings last week, they indicated the new forms weren't there. And then some of the stuff was gonna be templated, so I do have to look into that, because I do not want the agencies to run out and start completing all those forms to be told that they're the wrong ones. So I'll be looking at that
I think they
tomorrow.
did say if people used the old forms, they didn't have to resubmit them, they'd work through
they?
them. But,
Okay.
yeah, but, and I looked at the link Friday, and there were no, they're gonna put a link up on the EMS page to the blood labs for this, and there wasn't a link, so.
But if it takes a few months to complete the forms, by the time they get submitted, the state's gonna say, no, we need these new forms. From what they're saying, it takes a while to complete it, so if they
No,
start the old forms,
I
it could be a problem.
I believe the lady said that they would accept the old forms for people who had submitted them. For the new folks, I think they want the new forms yet, but for anybody who's in process, so. So if anybody else has applied from in the region and is looking to get in, they can do that.
Right. So again, we'll be working on whatever assistance we can give to these agencies. And I've already spoken with Erica, FDR-HPO, and just wanted to see where we went from here. So, you know, hopefully that we can get the hospital folks on board at all levels, but asking that you folks take it back to your respective hospitals as well. And again, I sent you all the PowerPoint along with the link and the timing for the presentation, so if somebody doesn't believe it, they can watch it for themselves. So that's where we stand with that, and we'll work on those notifications, and I would say that on the regional study as well, if anybody has an idea, just email me, so. Anything else on the ATS?
Mr. Bush?
One quick question. That, so, like, search and rescue has an agreement with Wellville. We have the operating authority for Lewis County. We can't do it, we can't touch any hospital outside of our authority, correct?
Well, no, that's not true.
Okay.
As an example, let's say you have, as a nonprofit corporation, you have one, a patient who's in your residence, who's in resident of your county, who now is in Samaritan and needs to go to Syracuse with blood.
We're entitled to that, correct?
You can take that trip, no different than anybody else. I'm not even gonna try to get into the CON ramifications of all this, because that's well above my pay grade to go at that. But right now, what they have said, using a service that is there can transport these legally and takes a lot of the liability off everybody involved in this. Now,
Well, but the exception is you don't have an agreement with Samaritan.
Right.
Right.
That was my question, is if
Right.
Samaritan
Right.
came and said, hey, search and rescue, we want to get an agreement, is that legal?
Yes.
under the DOA?
yes, because adding, as I understand it, it's fairly easy, and I've not done this, but as I understand it from staff comments, post this and so forth, it's easier, once you have the initial license, it's fairly easy to just update contracts,
Right, you just copy and paste.
basically.
I added another hospital and it took me 3 months, and I had to get Dan Clayton to
Push it.
push it through.
Well, no, but my point is, it's
Again,
easier than the original.
Supposedly.
I'm just saying, that's what's been said, it's supposedly easier than the original application.
It's just gotta be pushed through because
right,
it seems to
right.
be sitting on somebody's desk, because
Again, don't know, but I'm just, but again,
Wadsworth holds something. From my experience, Wadsworth.
yes.
Well, they have insisted that they are,
Gonna be
making
better.
the process so it will move through quicker.
yeah. So I would think a new process with this recent come to light would be useful. So as an example, if you know, and then, so the question becomes, if the local CONs holders can't do it, can you go do it? I mean, is it a higher level of care and all that good stuff? Far better than my pay grade. If we have to get there and ask that question, I'll be happy to raise it to the powers to be, but I'm not prepared to answer that today.
Okay, Maya, did you have a comment or question? Sorry, I thought you had raised your hand. Justin did. You forgot. Okay. All right, any other new business? Okay.
Question. Any hospitals in the area, or ERs in the area specifically, has any anybody notice that there's been like a slowing down or delay in ambulance transports or ability to get ambulances from your facilities? I'm just wondering, because we've noticed it a lot. Of course, we're pretty far out. Huh?
To
Transfer patients, from our hospital to another hospital.
It's always been.
It's gotten worse in the last few months. This culminated in about 3 weeks ago, about a nurse who came in our hospital after an MBA. She was a nurse at Samaritan who had 6 fractured ribs, a 10% pneumothorax, a T11, T12 compression fracture, possible T11, T12 compression fracture, and they're going in a car to Samaritan.
Oh, Jesus.
Because 4 ambulance companies were called and nobody could get an ambulance to us at 7 o'clock on a Saturday night. And that's a bit of a problem. I'm not meaning to yank Guilfoyle's chain or anything like that, but I have my CEO on that, so it might have been dealt with already. So I don't know about that, but I'm just wondering if the other agencies too, they say we can't get anybody to come do it. Now, mind you, it was the last holiday. I'm trying to remember what it was, but that was that last
Labor Day weekend.
Labor Day weekend. And it was like, she didn't want to fly. That's the thing, she didn't want to fly. And so her friends took her in their car to Samaritan. Now, mind you, all these things taken small but together, probably she could have taken care of herself or gone in a car. But when you're talking about a potential, all the things together, and she was stable, it's a little bit problematic that we couldn't get an ambulance to take her. So she went by car to Samaritan.
So this is actually a common theme, and it is, we have a very fragile system.
Yeah.
And not only for interfacilities, which is kind of out of the scope of the Remac itself, but for emergency calls, we're suffering the same things. So, we keep diligently trying to improve that, and it's,
I'm just wondering if everybody else was experiencing it lately the way we have for the past 3 or 4 months, that's all. Things are a little bit slower to come, get a crew together and things like that.
All right.
Yeah, you are a little bit in that regard. Yeah, you are a little bit in that regard. I think part of it is the distance. The distance traveled is a big part of it. I've had major rural Metro will tell you 2 years ago during State Fair, they were hard pressed to come up with enough bodies to cover all their needs because the system, frankly, what happened was there was better economic opportunities at a hospital-based service, not a hospital-based to go work in the hospital than to stay in the streets of the paramedic. And that killed them in terms of manpower. And there's a lot of that going on in the industry. But up here, it's more exacerbated because when you're talking about a trip here, you're talking about an all-day, 8-10 hour with no weather sort of event sometimes. But I know that wasn't the case. But the point is, it's not that one. It's the fatigue. It's the fatigue of multiple a day. And I did 2 trips to Burlington. I'm not going anywhere. I'm done for the day. And that becomes the kind of the burn up of our
We
staff.
actually had 2 transports at the same time. We ended up calling at 1 o'clock in the morning a company in Syracuse. They came up the next morning and picked that one up.
Yep, no, I get it. But you are unique with that regard. I would tell you the other issue is, like Binghamton, the urban center usually covers well enough there with enough that it's not the same thing in Syracuse, urban center, Utica, urban center. Up here, your urban center is Watertown, but you have great needs in, what's the largest county, the second largest county east of the Mississippi. So it's a lot of geography, it's a lot of weather, it's a whole bunch of things. And it's hard to keep personnel from an owner of an ambulance sort of view because most EMS workers, AEMTs and paramedics don't join to want to do transfers. They're looking to do the 911 work, not the transfer work.
All right, does anyone else have any other new business? If not, if I could have a motion to adjourn? Thank you, everyone.